Today's first reading is number 579. And this is called The Limits of Tyrants. Please read the italicized parts. I'll read the regular type. Those who profess to favor freedom and yet deprecate agitation are people who want crops without plowing up the ground, want rain without thunder and lightning. They want the ocean without the awful roar of its waters. This struggle may be a moral one, or it may be both moral and physical, but it must be a struggle. Nothing without a demand. It never did, and it never will. Find out what people will submit to, and you have found out the exact amount of injustice which will be imposed upon them. Limits of tyrants are prescribed for the endurance of those whom they oppress. And we'll have a story for all ages. So, would any of the children like to come up? Hello. Hello. Here we go. And today we're going to be reading That's My Carrot. And you see we have a yellow bunny and a purple bunny, and they're both growing carrots. I love carrots, says the purple bunny. I am the best at growing them. Whoops, I think I missed the golden bunny. The golden bunny says, also, I love carrots. I am an expert in growing them. What does he have here on his bench? A flask and a microscope. He's a scientific bunny carrot grower. But something strange is going on in my garden. And our purple bunny says, I love carrots and I am the best at growing them. Do you know what this is? He's playing music on the saxophone to his carrots with a big speaker system. But something isn't right in my backyard. Ooh, something's going on. And now we have nothing, a little something, a little carrot, a big carrot, a bigger carrot, and it just keeps growing. So both rabbits look out their window to see this gigantic carrot. A few days later, they go outside and it's so big it's broken through the fence between their two gardens. It's a huge carrot. Look what I grew, says one bunny, and look what I grew, says the other bunny. That's my carrot. It's on my side. That's my carrot. It's on my side, says the other bunny. They both say, I'll dig it up. That's my carrot. This is my carrot. Look how big that carrot is compared to those little bunnies. Oh, yes, they are. I'll get it. He brings in his big machine to dig it up with. This big farm machine. The other rabbit looks at him with his little shovel, and he goes and gets his big machine. A bigger machine, yes. No, I can dig it up. That's my carrot. I've got it. I've got it. Where's the carrot?
It wasn't even a carrot.
That's just the top of the carrot with the greens, a little bit of orange there. I don't have it. I don't have it either. Ooh, look at the giant hole. Our carrot is gone. I'm going down there. I'm going down there too. Let's go down there together. Carrots all around. That's right. They've been growing a lot of carrots. Oh my goodness, look at the tunnels.
Yikes.
Hello? They're under our fence. There's one of my carrots. I think that's mine. Where did they come from? I think we're lost. Whoops, wrong way. Are we there yet? Hey, does someone live down here? How long have we been walking? I smell something yummy. There's light ahead. Uh-oh. At the bottom of the tunnels, what do they find? Oh, welcome. You're just in time for carrot soup, says the little mole. They have a little mole been stealing carrots.
Yeah, but how could it steal that entire thing?
Oh, because moles are good at digging. We love carrots. All 3 of them. Here you go. There they are, loving their carrots. Now we can be experts in sharing them. Ooh. That's not quite all. What should we grow next? I'm an expert at growing turnips. Me too. So they had a big war over the carrot, but then they got together and now they're going to do turnips. You want to take this with you? Okay. Let's sing the children out. In this congregation, we found it helpful to share the ups and downs of our lives by the practice of taking a stone from a bowl, holding it in our hand, warming it, and expressing our thoughts of joy and/or concern, and then placing the stone in the water so that the ripples of the water carry our joys and concerns out into the wider world. I'll begin by finding a mic that's working. I'll begin by taking a stone. Push the button. Is that better? No. One more time. That says it's off. That says it's on. Use the big one. I'll just borrow the big one. That's my carrot. Okay. I have both a joy and a concern to share. I have problems with seasonal affective disorder, and so I actually had to take some time off work this week just to sleep. Just got that bad. But it's warmer now. Spring is coming. So hopefully I won't have this problem anymore. Who's next?
If you can, start walking up, then we can save some time. So, a couple of joys to share. First, I talked with Mark Sanderson on the phone recently, and he sounded good and used the word hopeful among the other things that he said. And there was one other thing. Now I can't remember. So anyway, continue to think of Mark and Susan. And second one is for the my wife Janine. This week, the 27th, is the 13th anniversary of her life-saving Whipple surgery to help her with pancreatic cancer. So ever since 2012, she's been blessed with 13 more years of life, for which we're very grateful. And then the third one is for this card. Last Sunday, I happened to be here at the church in the afternoon, and Life in Christ was having a more than festive occasion downstairs, and found out it was the 50th wedding anniversary of the parents of the president of their church. His name is Fidel, and so we are in touch with him a lot. So I got a nice card for them that I think we could sign as a way of affirming them and reaching out in friendship. So I'll put the card in the back for you to sign on the way out. Thank you.
Hello, my name's Eric, and this isn't a joy, it's not a concern, but it's a fond remembrance. There were members of the congregation that came from Springfield, South Dakota. That's an hour west of Yankton, and they would drive here to Sioux Falls and be members of the church. Ted and Ruth Lindemann. Ted passed on many years ago, but just last weekend we got a check to the church in memory of Ruth Lindemann. So evidently Ruth has passed on also. But every time you look at that chalice, think of Ted and Ruth. Ted made that chalice for this church. So this is for Ted and Ruth.
I have a concern, and it's for Pope Francis. If you haven't been following, Pope Francis is very, very ill, and he's going to turn for the worse, it sounds like. Whatever your feelings towards the church, and there are very, very many, the Catholic Church, but I think Pope Francis has been a rather powerful voice for a lot of people, and a rather unusual voice in the church, and I think one of the most lovely things he said is that he very much hopes that hell is empty. So I do, I do like that sentiment coming from that particular branch of the world, and I do hope that he finds some comfort in however this ends for him.
Hi, I'm Steve. Couple of little joys and concern. Joyful that the flu is no longer in our family. It's concerned about my wife's continuing health issues. That's Alan's comment about his wife. I was very grateful for that. Joy today is I was able to get together with my friend who's battling pancreatic cancer this week, and we had a lovely lunch together. But I have a concern because she's also got more bad news with those, and her cancer is spreading, and they're stopping chemo.
Hi, my name is Liz, and I have a couple concerns, and one is for all of the federal employees that are being horribly dismissed from their positions, and how that's going to affect, of course, them and their families, and consequently all of us. And a friend of mine in St. Paul, she's volunteered for 25, 30 years for an organization called Center for Victims of Torture, and because they rely on U.S. aid money, that is all closed. So that's very sad for them.
Hi, my name is Stephanie, and I just want to put in a stone today for my mom who has surgery this coming Friday for her breast cancer, and we're just being hopeful that that is what is needed to take care of that and things get better from here.
I'll take one last stone, and I'll represent all of our joys and concerns, especially those who have remained in our hearts unsaid. And now let's take a moment for silent reflection on what we've heard today in our joys and concerns. And let's continue on with our second song, number 119, Once to Every Soul and Nation. Our next reading is number 586. And again, I'll read the regular type if you would please read along with the italics. The idea of democracy. As labor is the common burden of our race, so the effort of some to shift their share of the burden onto the shoulders of others is the great durable curse of the race. So I would not be a slave, so I would not be a master. This expresses my idea of democracy. Whatever differs from this, to the extent of the difference, is no democracy. Our reliance is in our love for liberty. Our defense is in the spirit which prizes liberty as the heritage of all people in all lands everywhere. Destroy this spirit, and we have planted the seeds of despotism at our own doors. To deny freedom to others, deserve it not for themselves. and cannot long retain it. Why should there not be a patient confidence in the ultimate justice of the people? Is there any better or equal hope in the world? Let's have faith that right makes might, and in that faith, let us to the end dare to do our duty as we understand it.
It's a good time to highlight our disclaimer, which is listed each day in our program insert. The fact that we value freedom of expression and belief, as does our entire denomination, and so the ideas expressed are the speakers. Without expecting agreement or conformity, we welcome a diversity of viewpoints. In other words, you're welcome to disagree, and you're welcome to bring your disagreements to the circle discussion afterwards, especially. In what I share, it's not meant to be anything about partisan politics. My main goal is to comfort the afflicted and afflict the comfortable, and I think most of us here are more afflicted than comfortable today. It's about honesty versus dishonesty, integrity versus betrayal, and responsible leadership versus abuse of power. So you've probably heard of the Heritage Foundation. It's a think tank that's been around for a long time in Washington, D.C. Project 2025 is not their first blueprint. It's been producing plans for Republicans presidents since the 1980s for Ronald Reagan. The influence of this foundation is huge, and apparently their resources are huge as well. After the first year of this president's first term, the Heritage Foundation boasted that he had adopted nearly 2/3 of their proposals. In the recent campaign, when the Project 25 came to light, it was actually unveiled almost 2 years ago in April of 2023, and it became criticized by the other party, and so the candidate who's now president tried to distance himself from it and said he didn't know anything about it, and thought some of it was too crazy. Some of the authors of this project, 900 pages long, by the way, and it took $22 million to produce. Some of those authors had served in the first White House, and some are serving now, especially Russell Vogt. You probably have heard that name. He's at the acting head of the Office of Management and Budget, which is responsible for the $6 trillion federal budget. So he's not as in the limelight as others, but he seems to be behind a lot of it. So there are 4 policy aims, and by the way, my resources were mainly the article by the BBC, and then a author by the name of Heather Cox Richardson, who I commend to you, who does well-researched and informative, insightful articles. Heather Cox Richardson, you can Google her. 4 policy aims are: number 1, to restore family as a centerpiece of American life, and 2nd, to secure God-given individual rights to live freely. And I'll talk about these two together. Those rights are, of course, very narrowly defined. They don't allow abortion, which is mentioned 200 times in the document. They suggest removing mifepristone from the market, insisting on no gender divergence, subsidizing religious and private schools with public funds, and cracking down on woke ideologies such as diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so we've heard a lot about that. There's also a section that wants to remove porn, but that doesn't seem to get as much leverage because so many of the tech companies make so much money on porn that has become kind of a mixed message on that one. The third policy aim is aimed at border security. The project suggests that the Department of Homeland Security be dismantled and combined with other immigration enforcement units and other agencies to create a much larger and more powerful border policy operation. It would also eliminate visas for victims of crime and human trafficking, while also fast-tracking applications for migrants who can afford to pay a premium. So it seems like instead of give me you're tired, you're poor, you're huddled masses yearning to breathe free, it's give me you're wealthy and talented. And then finally, the political area is the fourth area that is dealt with in Project 2025, and the one that's gotten the most attention with the sledgehammer approach to government agencies, clearly in line with those recommendations. There's a concept that they talk about called unitary executive theory, which simply means putting the entire federal bureaucracy under the direct control of the president. That's unitary executive theory. And so even independent agencies like the Department of Justice, doing away with the Federal Reserve, doing away with the Department of Education. We've heard a lot about that already, which is where a lot of the money for special needs goes, as you probably know. So shortly after being sworn in, these huge number of executive orders were signed, and obviously there were a lot of people behind this that had been doing their homework ever since the election. And so we even heard the president say off with a live mic, now what am I signing here? And so there were these efforts to, for example, eliminate job protections for career civil servants who could be replaced by political appointees unless the job was eliminated entirely. We soon saw the shutdown of the Agency for International Development until a federal judge issued an injunction. And then the news that the Department of Government Efficiency under Elon Musk was given access to millions of Americans' personal data. It's clear that the president was able to hit the ground running on January 20th, which was only 34 days ago, in case you haven't been counting. All of these strategies were mapped out in the 900-page document. It included creating a database of conservative loyalists and a training program for these new government employees. Well, there's an ominous lesson from history that I think deserves mention. For the first 100 years of our country's existence, the president after president appointed their friends and cronies to fill government jobs. It was called the spoils system, from that phrase, to the victor go the spoils. In 1881, President James Garfield was only 6 months into his presidency when he was shot by a disappointed office seeker who didn't get the job he wanted through the spoils system. And so there had been efforts to do something about it, and after that, after the president was assassinated, those efforts finally resulted in the Pendleton Act a couple years later, which created the civil service system where federal employees would be chosen based on merit rather than connections. Although vestiges of the system persisted to various degrees, not only at the federal level, but especially in states and cities, most notably Tammany Hall in New York City, which was operative until the 1950s, and then the Daly family in Chicago famously until the 70s and 80s. Some of us are old enough to remember that. So, now the collusion between the most powerful man in the world and the richest man in the world continues that spoils system. Something that wasn't part of Project 2025 was the realignment of the whole world order. And that, I think, has shocked people the most in recent weeks. I think it's best summed up by the Scandinavian diplomat speaking at the European Security Conference in Germany after hearing from the United States Secretary of State and the Secretary of Defense, and the idea that Europe would be on its own and the United States wouldn't be protecting them the way that we had for 80 years under the NATO North Atlantic Treaty Organization. And so this speaker from Scandinavia said the mood in the room felt like being in a small vessel on a North Sea storm with people vomiting off both sides of the boat. I'm reminded of the phrase, those who refuse to learn from history are condemned to repeat it. So it also seems that for 10 years now, the author of The Art of the Deal has been colluding with Vladimir Putin in Russia, who, as the president famously said with regard to Ukraine, Putin could do whatever the hell he wants to. So now there are more and more evidence that there was Russian interference in not only the 2016 election, but also the 2020 election. And it's become kind of obvious, I think, that that's part of the deal that was struck between the two, is that Trump, if they would help him get elected, would help Putin to expand the borders of Russia. I think of the things that we've seen as a domestic version of shock and awe, which were the phrases that were used proudly by the George W. Bush administration about the attack in Iraq. Another historical parallel can be drawn with the ways that Christians in Germany divided during the Nazi era. Germany had a state church at that time, and the vast majority of German Christians were loyal to both the Nazi government and the German state church. But a courageous Lutheran pastor named Dietrich Bonhoeffer, who some of you have heard of, went on the radio and reprimanded Hitler just 2 days after he became the chancellor in 1933 because of the way that Hitler had been denouncing the Jews. Bonhoeffer continued to speak and teach and write for the next 10 years, which is kind of remarkable, but apparently I didn't know this till recently. He was part of the Abwehr, which was the military secret service in Germany, and so he had this role, which apparently was useful for a long time, but even though he had these dissenting opinions, and so Bonhoeffer, along with dissenting pastors, formed a movement called the Confessing Church, which was outside of the state church. But no more than 20% of the pastors ever joined that movement, so they were very much in the minority in Germany during that time. But it's reminiscent of now the way recent attempts by the administration to discredit mainline denominations like Catholics and Episcopalians and Presbyterians and Lutherans, including, we've heard recently, Lutheran Social Services, which does a lot of charitable work, and they're being discredited as corrupt and unchristian and money laundering, while on the other hand, upholding a form of Christian nationalism among the conservative evangelicals. So that's reminiscent of that divide in Germany between the state church, which was loyal to Hitler, and then on the other hand, the Confessing Church, which didn't gain much traction, however. I do think, try to turn to something a little more positive. It's encouraging to see how quickly the federal courts have been able to respond to some of the actions by the old new president. I also find encouragement in talking with local immigration attorney Taniza Islam, who said that South Dakota Voices for Peace has banded together with other organizations to file lawsuits whenever possible against the most egregious actions that take place. And so we're seeing that, of course, right and left. I recall when the first administration tried to dismantle the Affordable Care Act, and somebody can correct me if I'm mistaken about this, but when that happened and it went to the Supreme Court, the court ruled to keep the Affordable Care Act in place, and part of their rationale is the huge disruption that would result from canceling the entire program. And so if disruption could be invoked for the Affordable Care Act, then that could certainly be invoked in terms of a lot of the things that have been happening recently, whether it's essential farm workers in California or essential meat packing plant workers. I mean, you could list a lot of essential people who are being under threat of being rounded up and sent away. Another little tangent that gives me hope is from a recent interview on Hidden Brain with Shankar Devantan on public radio. It included an author by the name of Sarah Jacket Ray, who had written a book called A Field Guide to Planet Anxiety. And in this book, she talks about the issue of how to keep from despair in the face of overwhelming problems. And it was initially applicable to the climate change, which is so huge a problem. And what this author has found is that so many young people are well versed in the seriousness of climate change, but they feel helpless and hopeless. And so she was trying to figure out how to get beyond that feeling of hopelessness and guilt and anxiety. Well, we can also feel helpless and hopeless in the face of an administration that is so powerful and so contrary to the values that we hold. And so, in answer to the question, what is one thing I can do? This author, Sarah Jacket Ray, recommends stopping thinking that you are alone. Individualism is part of the problem. It's too big a hill for anyone to climb alone, and so we need to find ways to act in concert with others. And that concert is a very appropriate word, because the illustration she uses is singing in a choir. And if you've sung in a choir before, you know that sometimes you run out of breath at the wrong spot, but you're able to sneak a breath because the rest of the section will carry the song as you take your quick breath and then resume singing. And so think about that when you get exhausted, and recognize that you're not alone, that you're surrounded by a choir of others, like-minded people who feel the same way, and don't give up. So where do we find hope? What are some actions we can take, whether small or not small? How can we encourage one another? And how can we connect with like-minded people without entering into a pity party or a gripe session, or just trying to be negative and condemning? Someone did suggest to me that we may want to think about having our church open from during the week sometime for people to get together and talk and commiserate and share whatever they want to in a safe space, noting the fact that if you go to a coffee shop or a bar, you don't know who else is there, and you may not feel free to talk freely. So that's something we can address in the circle discussion today as well. The questions: where do you find hope? What actions are you taking, or would you like to take? And how can we connect with each other and encourage each other at a time when we feel very helpless and hopeless? Someone informed me just this morning that students in college are being told that you'll have this scholarship for next year, but we can't assume that it'll be there in the future. So, another big ripple effect that will affect a lot of people. We should think about unintended consequences too. I thought again of the fact that after the Dobbs decision trying to eliminate abortion in this country, the actual number of abortions went up, which didn't surprise me at all, because as I work with high school students in an alternative high school here in Sioux Falls, I can just imagine a pregnant teenager saying, "No blankety blank male judge is going to tell me I can't have an abortion." And so there's the defiant factor. There's also a phrase that I began to hear a few years ago about charitable giving in the face of frustrating situations, and it's called rage philanthropy. So, anyway, I have one final bit of hope, and that is a bit of inspiration, I should say. This is a prayer written by Rabbi Erwin Keller about how to prepare for taking in the news. My God, the soul you have placed in me is pure and vulnerable. I am afraid that looking at today's news will be painful. Encircle me in a robe of light so that I can witness the wounds of the world without being wounded myself. Let me learn what I need to know in order to be of my greatest use without being overwhelmed by despair. I feel your protective light now as I open myself to the world's suffering and the world's joys. Amen. May it be so.
And at this time, we'll have our offering, and half of the collection plate will be going to the Banquet West. Let's say together the words to receive the offering in the bulletin. We give these gifts freely. We receive these gifts gratefully. We dedicate these gifts to the work of our congregation, serving human wholeness, caring for our planet, upholding religious freedom, welcoming the stranger, loving one another. Our third song is number 108, My Life Flows On in Endless Song. Our final reading, I'll read myself. Save us, O compassionate Lord, from our folly by your wisdom, from our arrogance by your forgiving love, from our greed by your infinite bounty, and from insecurity by your healing power. The chalice is extinguished, but the light goes with us out into the world. Please remember, we'll have our snacks and coffee hour downstairs after the service, and at about 20 after 11, we'll have our circle discussion up here. Thank you.
That red one is